You know, for the longest time, the global financial system was kind of like the plumbing in your house, essential but totally invisible. It just worked. But that has all changed dramatically. Today, those pipes and wires that move money all over the world, they've been turned into one of the most powerful weapons in modern geopolitics. So we're going to explore how the very language of money became a battlefield and what that means for the future of all of our finances.
I mean, just think about that for a second. How do you do that? How do you cut an entire country off from the rest of the world's economy? It sounds like something from a sci-fi movie, right? But it's not. It's happening right now. And the answer? Well, it lies in controlling the very language that global money speaks.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First up, we'll get to know the global money messenger that made all of this possible in the first place. Then, we'll see the exact moment it was turned into a weapon. After that, we'll dive into the parallel systems being built to challenge it, and how the West is racing to innovate. And finally, we'll put it all together and figure out what this new financial battlefield means for, well, for all of us. Okay, so to really get what's going on, we have to start with the main character in this whole story, at least in the old financial order, a system called SWIFT. So SWIFT was created way back in 1973 to solve a really simple problem. The old telex system, it was just too slow and clunky for the modern world. So a bunch of banks from 15 different countries got together and created this cooperative. Its job to be a secure, standardized way to send messages. And this is the crucial part. SWIFT is not a bank. It doesn't hold your money. It just sends the messages, the instructions that tell other banks where to send the money. And the scale we're talking about here is just mind-boggling. Over 53 million messages every single day. That is the invisible heartbeat of the global economy. Every time a giant corporation pays a supplier overseas, or, you buy something online from another country, there's a really good chance a SWIFT message made it happen. For decades, you just couldn't do business without it.
And this is maybe the most important thing to understand. SWIFT is just the email. It's the messaging layer. The actual money, that moves later through settlement systems like Fedwire or CIPS here in the US. So think of it like this. SWIFT is you texting your friend, "Hey, I'm sending you 20 bucks." The settlement system is when that 20 bucks actually shows up in their account. That distinction is absolutely key to understanding what happens next.
So the big question is, how did this totally neutral messaging system, the very bedrock of global trade, become a weapon on a global battlefield? Well, the first hints of this shift started back in 2012 when some Iranian banks were disconnected. But the real earthquake, that hit in 2022. In response to the invasion of Ukraine, major Russian banks were just kicked off the network. All of a sudden, this boring technical utility became a geopolitical superweapon. And by late 2024, they even closed the last major loophole for energy payments. The financial isolation was pretty much complete.
But it wasn't just about blocking messages. Oh no, the G7 went a massive step further. They froze around $300 billion of Russia's central bank reserves. Now, this was Russia's outside money, assets like dollars and euros held in foreign banks. It's their financial war chest for a crisis. And just like that, with the flick of a switch, it was completely immobilized.
And you better believe the rest of the world was watching this unfold. The lesson for a lot of countries was crystal clear. If you rely completely on a system that someone else controls, you are incredibly vulnerable. And that realization kicked off a global race to build sanction-proof alternatives.
Russia, for its part, had seen the writing on the wall back in 2014 and had already started building what you could call a financial fortress. They had their own version of SWIFT called SPFS. They launched their own card network, Mir, to replace Visa and MasterCard at home. They even set up instant payment links to friendly nations. And yeah, they got creative with workarounds using crypto, shell companies, you name it. But all of that came with a pretty hefty price tag, a kind of sanctions tax. Okay, so if Russia's strategy was all about defense and survival, China's has been all about offense and ambition. They're not just trying to protect themselves, they're trying to build a completely parallel financial universe, with their currency, the yuan, right at the center.
And the centerpiece of that whole plan is CIPS, the cross-border interbank payment system. Now, unlike SWIFT, this isn't just a messenger. It actually clears and settles transactions in Chinese yuan. And just look at that growth, a 43% jump in volume in just 1 year. This isn't just some tech alternative. This is the plumbing for a world that's less dependent on the US dollar. It's a foundational piece of a totally different global economic order.
And the innovation here goes way beyond just copying the old system.
You've got projects like mBridge, a team-up between China, the UAE, and others that use central bank digital currencies to completely redesign how money moves across borders. And this chart shows it perfectly. It's a direct assault on the weaknesses of the old way. It's practically instant, it's cheap, it's direct, and crucially, it's controlled by its members, which makes it super resistant to outside sanctions.
The BRICS nations are looking to take this a step further, proposing a new settlement asset they're calling the unit. The idea is for it to be a neutral way to trade between themselves. And what's really interesting is how it's made up. 40% is backed by physical gold, a classic move for stability, and the rest is a basket of their own currencies. It's a really clear attempt to create a system for settling trade that doesn't depend on any single country's currency or debt.
So, with all these new alternatives popping up left and right, the West suddenly realized it couldn't just stand still. The old system was looking slow, expensive, and frankly, a bit outdated. And that was creating the perfect opening for competitors. The race to innovate was officially on.
Now, the G20 had already set some pretty ambitious goals way back in 2020 to make cross-border payments faster and cheaper. But, as you can see from the data here, they are falling way behind schedule. The cost to send money is still more than double the target, and the speed just isn't there yet. This performance gap is the strategic window of opportunity that systems like CIPS and mBridge are just pouring through.
So the West's answer to this challenge is something called Project Agora. It's being led by the Bank for International Settlements and 7 major central banks. And the idea isn't to rip everything out and start over, but to give the system a radical upgrade. They're exploring what's called a unified ledger that basically tokenizes money to make settlement instant and seamless. They want to fix the core problems of the old model, but, and this is the important part, keep it all within the existing regulated financial system. It's a big bet on evolution, not revolution. And this quote from the governor of the Bank of Italy just sums it up perfectly. Weaponizing a currency inevitably reduces its attractiveness and encourages the emergence of alternatives, its cause and effect. The very act of using finance as a weapon is what's forcing the rest of the world to look for another way. Okay, so we've seen the weaponization, the reaction, and the race to innovate. What does this new, fragmented, and super competitive world of finance actually mean for everyone? Let's bring it all together. This is the new reality. First, we now live in a world of parallel systems. The SWIFT and dollar system isn't the only game in town anymore. Second, all this competition is pushing digital innovation into overdrive. Things are getting faster and cheaper for everyone. Third, and this is the big one, the idea that financial plumbing is neutral is over. It's dead. Control over these networks is now a core part of national power. And finally, for any business operating globally, this is a compliance nightmare. You're constantly caught in a catch-22 between conflicting sanctions from different sides. And all of this leaves us with one massive question for the future. For the better part of a century, the rules of global money were written more or less in one place. But now, that map is being redrawn in real time. The race to build the financial rails of the future is on, and whoever wins, well, they will get to write the new rules of money.